Okay, so let's go through some of the other shots that I delivered on this job. Now, before I even get into that, I want to mention that we were there for 3 days, partly because we wanted a contingency day in case of weather, and boy, I'm glad we had it, because the first day we got down there, it was thunder and rain and fire and brimstone, and it was just almost impossible to shoot. So what we did was we focused on some interiors that did not really feature the view in any capacity. And what ended up happening was we had to jam a hell of a lot of shooting into just 2 days. And that's fairly common on these travel jobs, especially when you're going so far out of the way to get them done. So in this case, I will point out the shots that we did when we were on our rain day, so to say, and you'll immediately be able to tell why we did that, because when you look outside and you see that crystal clear blue water, it is the difference between somewhat drab photos and those totally quintessential Caribbean sea photos. So this is the first shot that we did, and this was actually a little bit deceptive because the dynamic range here is just enormous. Imagine like bright Caribbean sunlight right near the equator, blasting down with these dark, dark wood interiors. So this was a pretty tricky one to pull off, but I absolutely loved the composition, and I would have not been happy had I got out of here without making the shot. I just love this picture. Coming back and facing exactly the other way, we actually shot this on our rain day. You can see some of the rain sort of pooling out here. But again, relatively similar shot, but the darkness outside does allow us to get away with a bit of a more compressed dynamic range, so it wasn't so tricky to light. This one, again, on the rainy day, just trying to play with a little bit of mood. You can see some sunlight coming from left to right. That's actually a flash that I put over there to simulate daylight coming in. And lastly, again, we tried this on a cloudy day, but I think my favorite of these three was actually this one with that daylight again coming left to right. Then we have our entryway shot. This was also shot on the cloudy day because there's really not too much view to feature here, so I felt comfortable kind of getting away from that and allowing the house to be filled with that soft natural light. Here's our stairway shot, and this light coming through the stairs, there's actually track lighting up the side of these stairs here. I actually added a flash to kind of accentuate that and give it these really cool sort of beams of light. And that also kind of drives home the point that those stairs are floating, they're drilled into the wall. It's just really, really amazing in person. Next up, we have some detail shots. If I have the time, and on this cloudy day we certainly did, I basically set up an umbrella and just washed soft light over all these beautiful chairs and the tables, and just captured some detail shots of the textures for the interior design. This house was designed almost entirely from top to bottom by the same architect. He did the interiors and the exteriors, so I really wanted to show a lot of those textures and pieces of furniture that he designed himself. This is kind of the game room man cave area. This is a relatively simple shot, just done with a GL1 hot light. Again, this was shot on that cloudy day because we didn't have any view to really deal with. Here's our first kitchen shot. This is more of a detail than anything. And here is our hero kitchen shot, which is again a one-point perspective. And in this shot, you can really see the shift to the left. Now, this looks like very natural light, but we actually had about 15 feet of flag and scrim boomed up to the ceiling to block the light coming in from behind, because again, there is that gigantic window right behind us, which really just flooded this with light and killed all the texture. So again, I did block a lot of light for this shot. Again, some more kitchen details showing off the texture, the tables, the woodworking. Look at that amazing pattern in the floor, just super cool finishes throughout this entire home. Here's another shot. This is kind of a graphic one-point perspective kitchen shot. Again, really shows the play on the color and the texture and the feel of all these, the wood and the stone all coming together to make this kitchen what it is. Then we go upstairs to do a couple bedroom shots. I think this was a 7 or 8 bedroom house, but the architect said there's only 2 or 3 bedrooms that are really worth showcasing. So that's all we're going to shoot. And this is a simple one-point perspective out over the bed. And now when we have a sunny day, you can really see how that ocean comes to life. Again, here's the master. This was rather deceptive as it probably took us a good hour to stage this to get everything just perfect. There's a couple detail shots in that master bedroom. And here is what I think is one of my favorite shots of this entire shoot. This is actually a single ambient light exposure in daytime, very similar to the photo that I taught you guys that I was going to do underneath the moonlight. So I just thought this was this most amazing, kind of surreal, calming photo Very simple, again, reduced it down to the simplest elements. I think you could place yourself right in that shot. Just love this one. Here we start to see some of our twilights. For these twilights, I made sure that I had 2 or sometimes 3 cameras all capturing the scene at once. I had a 6D, a 5D Mark III, and a 5D SR all set up in different locations, either on timers or with cam rangers to capture the twilight. So we could, again, we're only there for 2 days. We lost 1 day to weather. I want to maximize the photos that we do get. Here's again looking the other way. Shot on a different night, however, because again, if I were to put a camera in this frame and shoot the other way, I'd have to Photoshop that camera out. It'd probably take forever. So I planned this to shoot different angles, different nights, so that the cameras would not be seen if I were using multiple cameras at the same time. Here is a twilight exterior photograph over that infinity pool, which I thought was just amazing as well. I really loved that kind of pass through the window there, and that big architectural feature I just thought was super, super cool. Here's another twilight exterior shot. This was pretty simple in terms of lighting. I think all we really used was a light to kind of light up some of this wood and bring some life to this foreground down here as well. The interior, as you saw, more or less lit itself. Here's another really cool shot. This is actually about a foot or so over the infinity edge pool, shooting right back into the house. This is almost what you would see if you were relaxing in that pool. Kind of a different perspective, pretty interesting, really happy with how that one came out. Here's what I consider to be the money shot of the entire house. And this one was shot on the first day we were there. Actually, the rain clouds had started to kind of subside at this point, and you can see that the storm is sort of breaking up, but that entire day was spent with kind of overcast gray clouds. But I absolutely love this shot, and this is actually shot at 17 millimeters, a bit wider than normal, but I wanted to capture that entire scene, kind of show the epicness of the space and the strong leading lines throughout. Here's another twilight, kind of similar to another one that I showed you previously, but I think this one has a stronger composition with a bit more leading lines, especially that one that comes right over your head, that cantilevered shade I think is really, really amazing. Here's a bit of a detail shot. This is just kind of going a little bit artsy with it as we've had our cameras set up and waiting for twilight. I thought the reflections on that water kind of contrasted with the ocean was amazing. And you get just enough of a hint of Cozumel out there to sort of see exactly where you are. And again, it just kind of brings in the atmosphere of the location of this house. Here's another shot that's kind of similar to the moonlit shot that we did upstairs. The light on the clouds is, again, from the moon. And for the most part, the only light here is coming from the pool. I really like this minimalist, almost ghosty feeling that this shot has. It's very quiet, very contemplative, and there's just a few people down here on the beach to give a bit of context, add a bit of humanity to this picture. Lastly, we have a shot of the entryway going all the way through. Again, this was shot almost at complete darkness. You get a little hint of the exterior out there. And then we have a few more daytime details. Here we actually went down to the beach and we found a couple girls who were just on vacation or whatever, and we said, hey, do you guys want to come model for a photo shoot? It's going to be really modest. Obviously, you're not taking your clothes off or anything, but here's what we're doing. Because we kind of noticed they were checking out the house for a couple hours, and we invited them up, and we're like, hey, we'll trade you some drinks for a quick modeling session. And so we grabbed one of them, and they were super cool, really down to help us out. And I thought, again, this might add a little bit of context, a little bit of humanity to these shots, which are relatively sterile. We do have a lot of one-point perspective, kind of that very architectural feel. I totally believe that putting some human forms in here is going to soften those and make them feel a little bit more inviting. So glad we were able to pull that one off. Here's another daytime exterior. This was pretty tricky as we have the insane dynamic range, that absolute dark, dark, dark interior contrasted with this really bright equatorial sun. And this was pretty tough to compose as well because I'm at 17 millimeters and the house is so elevated, so I had to actually stand on like a fence line and put the camera over my head to get this shot. A couple more daytime exteriors. This is the same angle as that twilight. And again, just loved the graphic leading lines in this house. Here's a cool detail. You kind of get a lot of motion, again, a one-point perspective. The shadow and sunlight creates that diagonal motion through the picture. I think that was really, really interesting. This one is a cool little detail and is more or less a snapshot. All that was required was waiting for the right time of day until that sun was directly overhead. Pretty simple shot, not too much to it. Again, this was basically a snapshot as well, just a pool detail. The architect, again, loved the little details, the textures, and the way the wavy water kind of reflected on those tiles was really neat. Again, a simple quick detail shot here. The architect actually designed these chairs himself and wanted to show how they relate to the architecture of the home. Lastly, our front exterior. Unfortunately, there was a lot of things that did not go to plan out here, so the architect wasn't super thrilled with the landscaping, so we didn't spend a ton of time on this, but this is more of a sort of establishing shot. As you can see, I think one of the cooler things about this home is that it's very understated from the outside. You don't really start to understand the grandness of the home until you get in there, so that's kind of cool as well. Lastly is a shot that is very similar to our late twilight shot, shooting all the way through the house. The time of day for this one wasn't perfect, but I was coming back in from the daytime exterior shot and thought, hey, why not? It's kind of cool and kind of graphic, and the light is somewhat interesting, but like I said, it could have been better, but we had more important shots to attend to. But anyway, I'm glad I took this one because I love seeing the blue ocean all the way out there. It's actually a couple hundred feet from the entryway all the way to the infinity pool, and then probably another 200 or 300 feet beyond that to the ocean. So it's kind of cool to get all of that in one shot, that huge, huge distance that this house covers. So that's the last shot. Now you've seen at this point every shot that I've delivered, including the 4 that we edited together. And over the course of 3 days, I'm really happy with how things turned out. So for a lot of these shots, the architect already had something in mind. He would send me a render and say, hey, I'd love to redo this shot, so plan for that when we get down there. And for some other shots, I would see things that he initially didn't see that actually photographed beautifully. So as an architectural photographer, not only is it our job to appease our client, but it's our job to go above and beyond and show him pictures that he might not have seen himself. We tend to see things in different ways, and I think a valuable skill to have is the ability to convince your clients to go for more interesting pictures that they might not have seen. Things always photograph differently than they look in real life or than they look in renders. So I hope this entire section has helped you to better understand what really goes into an architectural photo shoot. Everything from the initial client email to putting together a bid to traveling to being on location and understanding what it really takes to make world-class images.